By the second half of the 1930s, Finland had long accepted that in any future war, probably with the Soviets, their main naval weapons would be mines, and their main theater would be the Baltic. The best ship they had for laying mines was the WWII, but she was just one ship and was realistically a hand-me-down relic of the First World War. New and better, clean slate, purpose-built ships were needed. After some foot dragging, these were eventually started in 1938 as the two ships of the 310-ton Ruotsinsalmi class. Not surprisingly, they again received technical aid from Germany, who by this point were openly rearming. Being purpose-built for the Finnish Navy's needs made a world of difference. Despite being half the weight of the older WWII, they could carry two-thirds the number of mines. They were also fitted with mine-sweeping gear. Showing their German influence, they were diesel-powered rather than WWII's coal. While not having armor, their hulls were thickened for some ice-breaking. Finally, as with other Finnish ships, they had a very shallow draft of just 1.5 meters. That's about 5 feet. This allowed them to work in close to shore. Primarily, though, it aided them in laying minefields and sweeping them. They were simply too shallow for a lot of mines to trigger. In theory, the downside was that, like most shallow draft ships, they could have had real problems in the open ocean. But they didn't go there. On paper, they also could have played escort sweeper to the coastal defense ships, but in practice, this rarely ever happened, as they were better used laying and relaying the minefields that helped keep the Soviet Baltic Fleet at bay. Given the limits of their size and role, the only downside was their construction time. Nearly 3 years each. 310 tons. Again, Germany. Having started in 1938, this means they missed the Winter War and were completed just before the Continuation War. In the Baltic mine-laying effort during the Continuation War, they made up for being the new guys by being the most active Finnish mine-laying ships. By far. During the Continuation and Lapland War, Finland laid about 11,000 mines by all means, mostly between Finland and Estonia. The most active ship was Ruotsinsalmi at 3,967 mines. Her sister WWII came in a distant second at 1,733 mines. The old WWII came in third at 1,275 mines before being retired. They obviously didn't turn the tide of the war, but they did hinder the Baltic Fleet's operations and even sunk a few Soviet submarines and ships. During the Lapland War, Ruotsinsalmi and WWII, along with others, would lay about another 650 mines. Ruotsinsalmi was started in 1938 and was completed in February 1941. WWII was also started in 1938 and was completed in March 1941. Main armament was one open 75mm dual-purpose gun at the bow. 100 mines could be carried, but they were also fitted with mine-sweeping gear. Propulsion was provided by two diesel engines generating 1,120 horsepower, venting to one funnel. Each drove one of the two propellers for a top speed of 15 knots. In late 1942, they were fitted with sonar, depth charges, and depth charge throwers to escort Finnish ships. On June 26, 1941, while dodging aircraft and submarines, they laid 200 mines near the Soviet-occupied Hanko. The next day, on June 27th, despite Ruotsinsalmi being nearly bombed, they laid 200 mines northeast of Osmussaari. 2 days after that, on the 29th, they again laid a full deck of 200 mines northeast of Juminda. Overnight, on July 20th, 21st, Ruotsinsalmi laid 100 mines near Moni despite shore fire. Next, on August 10th, both laid 200 mines southwest of Kalbata. A couple nights later, on August 13th, they laid 200 mines northwest of Juminda. While returning to port, Ruotsinsalmi's steering gear broke down and she had to be towed to Helsinki by WWII for repairs. With her sister under repair, WWII returned northeast of Juminda on August 15th and laid another 100 mines. On August 20th, WWII was once again off Juminda laying 100 mines. With repairs completed at Ruotsinsalmi on November 12, 1941, they laid 139 mines off Helsinki. They then mostly transitioned to mine sweeping of Soviet mines and escorting Finnish and German ships in the eastern Baltic. In mid-1942, WWII laid mines near Hogland. In the fall of 1942, they were fitted with German sonar and depth charges to provide ASW escort to ships against the growing threat of Soviet submarines. While dead in the water to listen for submarines off the coast of Tiskari on the afternoon of August 23, 1943, WWII was torpedoed by a Soviet PT boat and sunk in just a few minutes. As the war dragged on and the Soviets began taking the offensive along the Baltic coast in the second half of 1944, Ruotsinsalmi was again busy laying mines in the far east of the Baltic to try to prevent them from landing behind Finnish troops on the Karelian Isthmus. On June 16, 1944, she laid 37 mines. The next day, she returned and laid 100. On June 20th, she laid 100 mines west of Tirasara Island. The next day, she laid a barrage of 90 mines near Surinsaari. A few days later, on the 23rd, she laid 100 mines near Surinsaari. A few days later, on the 23rd, she laid 100 mines southwest of Tupura Island. 2 days later, after that, she laid 98 mines west of Polinimi. On August 19, 1944, she grounded and had to return to port for repairs to her rudder. With repairs completed and now in the Lapland War, overnight on November 16, 17, 1944, she laid 36 mines off Oro Island. Resupplied the next night, November 18th, 19th, she laid 80 mines south of Graharu Island. On January 12, 1945, along with Lohi, she laid 100 mines south of Hanko. While returning afterward, Lohi was sunk by a German torpedo, leaving Ruotsinsalmi as the only major mine layer in the Finnish Navy. Finally, on January 28th, she laid another 80 mines south of Hanko. Post-war, she aided in the massive mine-sweeping task. She continued serving with the Finnish Navy in various roles until the mid-70s. It had been hoped to save her as a museum ship, but the funds weren't raised, and after 20 years of trying and failing, she was finally scrapped in the early 90s.